This model I've been using to support me in understanding the emergence of inspiring women leaders DARE is called the landscape diagram. It's a model taken from human systems dynamics, a field developed by Glenda Ouyang, and she borrowed this model and has developed some of the ideas around it from Ralph Stacey. What's useful about this diagram is it gives us a representation of how complex adaptive systems work. So broadly, there are three stages or arenas. The one that we're most familiar with in our organizations and institutions is the organized space. When you think of organizations, there are always going to be functions that we want to sit in this place of high certainty and high agreement. Finance, auditing, personnel. We want those functions to happen and to produce their results and outcomes with a high degree of certainty and a high degree of agreement. In this space, we believe that things are predictable, that you can plan for them, and so we have a strong sense of certainty about what will happen if particular processes are followed. So in a sense of understanding change, we see change in one of broadly two frames. We might see that as static change, so being able to move something from A to B. You know that if you lift A up and put it down at the end of the table, it will have moved to the place that you want it to be. And dynamic change, when you know enough about some of the factors around that you can predict the trajectory of whatever it is you're planning to do. So that's a bit like throwing a ball, and if you know the forces of gravity, then you can broadly predict the parabola that it would follow in order to move from A to B. At the other end of the spectrum, where we have low certainty and low agreement, we have space that in fairly neutral terms we would call the unorganized space. And out here there is what we might experience as chaos, a high degree of uncertainty, a sense of unboundedness. So you can't really see any patterns or relationships or connections with other people or agents in the system. And so it feels, for some people in that space, quite scary. You're very much in the unknown, where things are highly unpredictable. And the space that sits between, in the context of complex adaptive systems, is a space that we call self-organizing. And in this space what happens is often from the unorganized space, different individuals, or we call them agents, will be floating around, not connected to anybody, but then they may begin to find each other, and so they'll start to relate, start to have exchanges of information, conversation, whatever it might be. And out of those relationships, certain patterns begin to emerge. And those patterns begin to define what the self-organizing entity becomes. So that self-organizing space is defined by patterns of interaction. Now, it doesn't make self-organizing space predictable, but what you do get in this space is a sense of differences can show up, differences and similarities, and with those differences you'll often get certain tensions, people bumping up against each other, and what they're doing is finding what is bringing them together. In a way, it's self-defined containers begin to emerge, and by containers what we mean is anything that holds a group of people together. So that can be a physical space in terms of a room, but in terms of human systems it's more often things around identity and purpose, group norms that begin to emerge. So this is the fundamental diagram that has helped us to understand how DARE has been emerging. A whole bunch of us floating around not really knowing each other in the unorganized space, and then through one woman talking to another woman, putting us in touch with another woman, we have begun to find others who we started to relate to, and through that relating and exchanging and communicating, we moved into a self-organising space held together by what came to be called the core group. And the core group began to define the purpose and clarify the intentions of what we were wanting to do. As we moved towards the event on the 15th of June, that took us down towards the organised space. So we had an event that happened in a particular space. It was organised in a very particular way that enabled women who attended to move in a fractal way from an organised space into self-organising themselves, into choosing particular actions that they wanted to take around parts of the system that they were passionate about. So changing the chemistry group, the young people's group, the virtual boards group have all organised themselves in a way that would be creating more certainty and agreement.